Hello, and welcome back once again to our program, 50 Days with God. We are so happy to see you here on our 47th day. We are nearing the end of this program, so pay attention to this special topic for today.
May the peace of God be unto you. My name is Pastor Elijah Zwane from South Africa. Once again, I'm very much pleased to share with you one of the lessons under the title, True Beauty. After God had created our first parents, Adam and Eve, the Bible gives us an account in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 to 31. It says, "And so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he them, male and female created he them. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day." Now on the sixth day of creation, that is on a Friday, man was the crowning act of God's creation. Now the Bible tells us that after God had created our first parents, he pronounced them good, meaning that everything had been done clearly and according to divine plan. In the book, the Review and Herald, February chapter, May the peace of God be unto you. My name is Pastor Elijah Zwane from South Africa. Once again, I'm very much pleased to share with you one lesson under the title, True Beauty. After God had created our first parents, Adam and Eve, the Bible gives an account in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 to 31. In verse 31 specifically, it says, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day." So on the sixth day, man was created, and man was the crowning act of God's creation. And the Bible gives an account that everything had gone according to divine plan, and God pronounced everything good. To testify that the servant of God in the book, the Review and Herald, February 11, 1902, the servant of God says, "All having took a deep and joyful interest in the creation of the world and of man. Human beings were a new and distinct order. They were made in the image of God, and it was the Creator's design that they should populate the earth." Now, this clearly tells us that when man was created, was supposed to bear the image of God, because we were created in his image. And God had pronounced everything good. In Psalms 139, verse 14, it also says, "I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well." Now, even the psalmist is singing that human beings were fearfully and wonderfully made. They came perfect in the hand of God because they bear the image of their Creator. And we are also told in the Bible, another creature, his name was called Lucifer, the angel. How was he created? In Exodus chapter 28, verse 13 to 14 says, "Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardius, topaz, and diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Verse 15. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. Now the Bible clearly tells us that how Lucifer, this angel, he was created a beautiful angel, a beautiful creature, and every precious stone was the covering of Lucifer. Today we can see how many people, they spend a lot of money to buy these precious stones. Others, they go down deep in the mines. Some they come back, some they don't come back. But they're trying to get to secure these precious stones. But Lucifer, this was his covering, how God had created this beautiful creature. But now the last verse of this Bible says, till iniquity was found in the heart of Lucifer. Now what iniquity was that? Isaiah 14 verse 13 now tells us that thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sight of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Now, we see this beautiful angel who was created with the covering of all the precious stones. Now he was not content. He was not satisfied. He was not happy in the condition God had created him. And then the worst thing that he did, he wanted now to exalt himself. He wanted to be like the Most High. He wanted to be like God. And now, not only Lucifer, we see that now after Lucifer had apostatized, then he had to influence those who were created by God, human beings created on the sixth day, whom God had pronounced them good and perfect. But we see now in the Bible, Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 29 says, and lo, this have I found, that God had made men upright, but they have sought out many inventions. So even men who were created in the image of God, now they are following in the footsteps of Lucifer. They are not satisfied or content with how God had created them. They have sought themselves many inventions. Now, what inventions were those? In Testimonies for the Church, volume 1, page 131, the pen of inspiration says, I saw them decorating their poor mortal bodies, which are liable at any moment to be touched by the finger of God and laid upon a bed of anguish. Now he said, these creatures that God had created, us, human beings, he said now, the servant of God, he said, I saw them, they were decorating their poor mortal bodies. They saw themselves many inventions, they decorated themselves. I don't know, understand if we do understand that our bodies are mortal, that at any moment they can be touched by the finger of God. So they make many decorations. This comes in different ways, different forms. Maybe in the way how we keep our hairs, or maybe having artificial hairs, and others, you see, the bodies are covered with tattoos that you can't even see what color the body is. And others, they go to painful experiences, maybe of piercing their ears, others piercing their tongues, others even piercing their nose, others the navel of the belly. And others, you see them, they even have to cut or remove their eyelashes, and even they start to join even the eyelids. All these are following under the footsteps of Lucifer, who was not content the way God had created him. Others, they even show this, that they are not content in dress and apparel. Now, in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 22 verse 5, God clearly states to us that it is an abomination to him if one will wear something that pertains to the opposite sex. That if you are a man, you want to wear that pertains to the opposite sex, maybe you wear dress or you wear skirts, it is an abomination to the Lord. Or if you are a woman, you start now to wear pants, then you are doing what God looks as an abomination. Although now in the world, to try and promote that, then they could say, no, this is unisex. No, these are pants for women. There is no such thing. This is just meant to cover that. Have you ever heard people saying, this skirt is unisex? Have you ever heard people saying, this dress is unisex? No, it all comes from the influence of Lucifer, who was not satisfied the way God had created him. In the Bible, we also have an account where the Bible clearly states that there are people, or the daughters of Zion. Now Zion means the city of God, or those who have been called by the name of the Lord. What they do, it says how Isaiah chapter 3, I read from verse 18. It says, in that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet and their colls and their round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers. Now how you see people, they put many chains, maybe like animals, others they put the bracelets, they put rings. All these are elements of uncontentment. And others, they put these bonnets, ornaments on the legs, and I've already spoken about headbands and jewelry and earrings. But now what does the Bible say? Isaiah 3 verse 24 says, and it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of getting a rent, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a stomacher, a getting of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. Meaning that they may try to do these things, inflict pain on the bodies, even maybe putting very strong chemicals upon their hair. But time will come that they are going to reap what they have sown. And instead of well-set hair, it will be baldness. How many times have you seen ladies having maybe to cut their hair because they have done something and then the hair will not grow anymore? They reap what they sow. But then what is true beauty? In Isaiah 40 verse 10 it says, take thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty. Psalms 144 verse 12 says, that our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth, that our daughters may be as cornerstones, polished after the similitude of a palace. So when we talk true beauty, it is the work of molding and refining, or the polishing of a character. This is the work that is done by mothers when they developed good character in their children, and engraving upon the tablets of their heart the lessons of enjoying as eternity. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 3 tells us also what is true beauty. Whose adorning? Let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold, or of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornaments of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of a great price. So our adorning should not be that of outward, for to our self-glorification, or to be praised, or that makes us to be proud. But the true adorning should be that one of the hidden man in the heart, because that is the true ornament or adorning, that it is good or is precious in the sight of God and regarded as the great prize. Why people are doing this, trying to adorn themselves, they are following the foolishness of fashion. Fashion, it is a tyrannical mistress, and it often compels people to devote themselves and submit to greatest pain and great inconvenience and discomfort. How many times have you seen people wearing very high heels, or maybe something that tightens them, that even the blood cannot flow? And maybe one time you find that these high heels, then they cannot wear them anymore. They hurry. How soon I can get home that I can take off these shoes? It is because they are following, or they are under, or they are oppressed by this tyrannical mistress, which is fashion. Fashion is a mistress that rules with an iron hand, and in very many homes, the strength and time and attention of parents and children are absorbed in meeting her demands. How many people have spent the little means that they have to try and meet certain standards, perhaps could have been set by people who are richer than them, things that they have seen or on fashion, then they spend the means instead of spending the means for their own livelihood, but they spend to gratify the pride that they have. It shows they are not content with the way God had created them. Means which would be a blessing even to others who are needy, but you find they are spent to gratify their own lusts. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 28, we know that Jesus came to set us free. Now, Jesus said, "And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." Jesus brings us back to creation, to nature, how God had created things. He said the lilies of the valley, they are even much better. He says they were better arrayed than Solomon. We remember Solomon, he was known of his wisdom, but also we know that Solomon had gathered himself many precious stones and had so much wealth that even decorated his dwellings and even his garments, such that when the Queen of Sheba came to visit Solomon, she had heard about his wisdom, about his wealth. Then she made a confession that yes, it is the truth that they have spoken about you. But she confessed that not even a half had been told. But Jesus said, even Solomon, in his wealth, in his beauty, he was not arrayed like the lilies of the field. So it shows us that the true beauty is to go back to nature, to be natural as God has created us. So true beauty is the inward man that we must strive to build or to adorn. And true beauty, it is the forming of a character after the divine similitude. And it must be a character that has been molded for eternity. In the book of 1 John chapter 2 verse 15, the Bible says, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, it's not of the Father, but it is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." So, the Bible clearly gives us a warning that we need not to love the world and the things that are in the world, because the things in the world, they are passing by. And if we love the things and the fashions of the world, then the love of the Father will not be in us. Because the fashions, following the foolishness of fashions, is going to destroy our spirituality, and we shall not be preparing for eternity. Because all the things that are in the world, it is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, how people They look and then they pride themselves. It's the pride of life. But it is not from God. As the world will pass by with all its lust and all that the world offers, but what is going to endure, it is a godly character. Job, in Job 17 verse 14, he gave us a very clear understanding that there is nothing we need to pride ourselves with. He says, I have said to corruption, thou art my father. To the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. And in Job 21 verse 26 says, they shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worm shall cover them. Job also said, the worms, corruption, the worms, they are under my skin, which means though we may try to decorate the outside part of our body, but the worms are still there. They are just ready to do the work of corruption. Immediately when someone dies, then the worms will start to do their work of corruption. So, true beauty is the adorning of the inner man, not the outside, which shall be corruptible. Anytime touched by the finger of God, you die, and then the worms shall devour thee. All that might have been adorned outside will not last. But if you have a character that has been adorned after the divine similitude, it is the one that we shall carry through the pearly gates of heaven. And we shall be able to meet Jesus Christ without shame. And we shall be able to form the characters after the divine similitude. In the book of 1 John chapter 3, verse 2, it says, Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it do not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Now, when we shall be like him, now Jesus Christ will not be putting earrings. Jesus Christ will not be having maybe some rings that have been put in the nose or anywhere, or even wearing bracelets and so forth. But Jesus Christ will come with his own glory and the glory of the Father. So it is only now in earth we must be prepared to be like Jesus, not to follow Lucifer, who was not content, but we must meet Jesus as he shall appear. Verse 3 said, and every man...
Hello, and once again, welcome to day 48 of 50 Days with God. Today is October 9th, 2020. My name is Atai Ramirez, and I come to you with the short health topic, a natural cure for depression. And I hope that you've all have been enjoying the program, 50 Days with God, as much as I have. I pray and hope that it has been a blessing to your life and that you can benefit from these topics. Now, I want to mention that I am not a doctor and I am not a licensed clinician. My field of study has been with public health. I work for hospitals and skilled nursing facilities, and I have seen an increase, personally speaking, in the rise of our geriatric population, as well as our youth from the ages of 13 to 30s with severe depression, and also from the ages of 50 and above. This has been very prevalent within the United States, and as a matter of fact, upon working just a couple of days ago, I noticed 4 new admissions to our behavioral health unit with our local hospital. So it is something that is said to be very severe, and I hope that today's topic, I can bring to you some form of element, some form of hope, and also treatment that has been used by naturopathic physicians. Now, keep in mind that these physicians, some of them are from out of the country, but overall, I would recommend seeking your primary care physician or your family doctor before you engage in any kind of holistic treatment. Thank you for tuning into the program, and I hope that you may benefit from this topic. I will now share my screen with you all so that I can bring you this information. Okay, so first of all, what is depression? Now, depression is defined by the American Psychiatric Association as a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. It is treatable, and it causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. Now, a couple of statistics that I have for you today are some which I have found with studies on major depressive disorder from NCBI. Now, it is said that major depressive disorder is a debilitating psychiatric illness, and it is currently affecting an estimated of 300 million people worldwide. It is a leading cause of disability globally. It is associated also with 800,000 deaths per year. Despite significant advances in the understanding and the exact causes of major depressive disorder, existing knowledge is incomplete, and currently treatments are inadequate and are said to be urgently needed. So an area of investigation that is actually new related to major depressive disorder is the gut microbiome, which I will briefly touch bases on this throughout my PowerPoint. And I hope that the information is of usefulness for you all. Now, there are different forms of depression. Some may be severe and some may be more mild. Persistent depressive disorder is one of them. In order to be diagnosed with this kind of depression, you would have had to have, or an individual would have had to have symptoms for at least 2 years, with periods of the depression being severe to it being mild, but the symptoms must be persistent for 2 years in order to be diagnosed. There's also postpartum depression, which is much more serious than what we all know to be the baby blues, which is a mild form of depression after a female delivers a child, a baby. Many women experience this form of depression throughout pregnancy and after giving birth, the major part of depression, that is. A lot of times it is said that the body's hormonal imbalance, if you've been pregnant and had a child, I'm sure you would understand, your body seems to be out of balance, your hormone change. And a lot of times those who deliver via a cesarean section, once after a major surgery, the body is trying to come back to its normal state, but it is also very hard because you've just delivered a child. You have a newborn baby who needs of you. And this can be very hard for women to deal with because they are on a nursing schedule and around the clock pumping for breastfeeding. You lose a lot of sleep, and that can cause bouts of extreme sadness, anxiety, and exhaustion, which accompanies this type of postpartum depression. And it makes it difficult for new mothers to complete daily care activities for themselves, and also feelings that they are not adequate to take care of their newborn. Others are psychotic depression disorders, which occurs when a person has severe depression plus a form of psychosis, such as disturbing delusions, hallucinations, which is hearing or seeing things that others cannot hear or see as well. The psychotic symptoms typically have a depressive theme, such as guilt, poverty, or a major one, illness. There is also seasonal affective disorder, which is characterized by the onset of depression during the winter months. Usually, this would happen with someone who feels lonely, who doesn't have a family, who thrives their happiness, or whom's happiness thrives on having a social life. And if others are not available to engage in this social life that is needed or that is used as a form of happiness, then the individual who is alone may feel down, sad, depressed. So when the summer and spring months come, then they feel back to normal again. And once again, it is repeated. Now, some risk factors for depression are genetic. History of depression within the family may make it more likely for an individual to have an onset of depression. It's thought that the condition can be passed down. Now, the exact way that this happens, though, is not clear. Death or loss can also lead to depression. I will briefly touch on that there is a difference between grief and depression. Now, grief of a loved one, whether it be divorce or death, are normal reactions. But sometimes if appropriate measures are not taken and the depressive symptoms are not taken care of, it can lead to major depression. And a lot of people tend to cover this up with keeping to themselves, alcoholism, recreational drugs, and even falling into promiscuous relationships, all of which can bring on major depression. Also, thoughts of suicide or feelings of worthlessness can arise. Conflict is another risk factor. Personal turmoil or disputes with family or friends lead to depression. Abuse, past physical, sexual, or emotional abuse can also bring it on. So, with this being said, we can recognize that the repression of emotions, of what you're feeling, of what you're going through, is not healthy. Seek medical attention as soon as possible if you are at risk for, if you have any of these risks for depression. Excuse me. Other risks for depression are life events, sometimes even good things such as graduating. Why graduation? After a student has, for years, arduously worked on studying, on projects for school, finally graduates, it's time to look for a job. And because of the busy lifestyle they have had within school, they don't have much of a social life. This social life is no more present when they're out of school. Now, for those who have graduated but cannot get a job, such as times now, a lot of jobs are frozen. So it's hard for new grads to look for a job with no experience. And this can lead to depression because of feelings of worthlessness. They're not busy anymore. They don't have the social life that they used to have. Everybody goes their separate ways. And I'm talking about friends, sometimes maybe even family. So it's a different life change that can also lead to depression, especially if the if the individual is an only child. Loss of employment or income, divorce, and retirement. Finances and divorce are also said to be of the top 10 major factors for severe stress within Americans. The reason for this is because finances always bring on about a stressful situation. How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to pay bills? I just got laid off and have children and mouths to feed. All of these things bring on severe stress. People fall into alcoholism, tobacco, recreational drugs. They feel worthless. They can't take care of their family. And this brings on a form of depression. Divorce, if not dealt with appropriately, can also lead to depression. Now, symptoms may subside after a while of a heartache, but if the individual has been curing this heartache through measures that are not healthy, such as I've mentioned, alcohol, tobacco, and recreational drugs, it will bring on an onset of divorce, and the individual may never overcome their state of being divorced or moving on with their own life as an individual and no longer as a couple. Also, retirement. Retirement, because after an individual has worked for years and years on and they cannot work anymore, it is recommended to fall into a voluntary service. If there are no grandchildren to be taken care of, if there's no aspirations for traveling, or if the person is alone, they can fall into a depression because they feel useless, as if nobody will want them, nobody can use them anymore. They've worked their entire life, and a lot of times, many have nothing to show for it. Now, one note that I want to point out is the difference between grief and depression. Now, grief is feelings of sadness, of loss, and they generally begin to lessen within 3 to 6 months after the loss. Timelines vary from individual to individual. It just depends on many factors, the type of person that you are, how emotionally strong you are, how mentally and physically strong you are to overcome the loss of a loved one, or as I would mention, to fill that void of someone who was once present and very active in your life. Now, integrating loss into normal life can take 1 to 2 years, and symptoms will eventually subside. But if symptoms do not subside within this time range, it mostly falls into a depressive type of disorder, whether it be mild or severe. Now, this kind of depression needs to be intervened by professional help. Just very quickly, in grief, thoughts of death may surface when thinking or fantasizing about joining the deceased loved one. In major depression, though, thoughts are focused on ending one's life due to the feeling of worthlessness or undeserving of living or being unable to cope with the pain of depression or with the pain of the lost one. For example, when a grieving heartbreak or loss of a loved one, an individual can still a lot of times go out and enjoy enjoyment in the things that they've enjoyed before. Now, when they fall into a severe depression, these things that they once enjoyed or that remind them of the loved one, they will no longer enjoy. They won't enjoy anything that they used to love. And that is a reason for an intervention. Other symptoms that can conclude that an individual is depressed and can vary from mild to severe include from mild to severe, which this is the list that I have here, feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed, changes in appetite depending on the individual. Some may gain weight, some may lose weight, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. As I mentioned early on in my PowerPoint, major depressive disorder is a debilitating or is a disability globally. A lot of times when a person falls into major depression, there are some individuals, it is said that those with bipolar depression, because bipolar is considered a form of major depressive disorder, cannot move. They are so debilitated, they cannot get up out of bed, they cannot function on a day-to-day basis. They isolate themselves from everyone they know, from their family, their friends, and they disappear. They can't even as much as move, or like I said, get up out of bed, and they sleep for days on end. Loss of energy or increased fatigue, increase in purposeless physical activity, which is maybe over exercising, not being able to sit still, or slowed movements or speech to the point where somebody can notice or it is easily observed by others. Feeling worthless or guilty, difficulty thinking, concentrating or making decisions, and the most severe thoughts of death or even suicide. Other symptoms that come about because of depression also rise due to health conditions such as thyroid problems, vitamin deficiency, cancer, chronic pain, heart disease, diabetes, HIV. I have included COVID-19 because it has been mentioned to me, although I have not seen any relevant research on this, but it is said that once a person recovers from COVID-19, they have bouts of depression and they go on living life, but not being their happy selves. And it's very hard to cope with this type of individual, this type of depression, not just within the individual, but for the family as well. While the family is feeling happy for the recovery, the individual might be feeling depression. However, I have not been able to find any relevance as to why that happens, but it happens within older people, mid-aged people, and also those who are the younger population who have also had COVID and recovered. Cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, I have put in bold print because these are the leading causes of chronic illness in the United States. Diabetes type 1 and type 2, after living an unhealthy lifestyle, a person gets diagnosed with this incurable but treatable disease. Now, there are some studies that say that one can reverse diabetes now, but it is a very strict lifestyle change. Once on medication, you have to monitor the medication, change your lifestyle, become more active. And this is very hard for people to do. You can't eat things that you used to be able to eat, and you have to maintain a healthy lifestyle. This can be very hard for some individuals, and they eventually end up giving up on themselves, are in and out of the hospital due to diabetes, and eventually this does lead to depression, which also can lead to alcoholism. Heart disease is actually the leading cause of death in the USA for men and for women. It is said that up to 33% of people who have had a heart attack end up with depression, and this is according to the American Heart Association. The risk of heart disease is also higher among people who have depression, and having depression can interfere with your recovery from heart disease. So this is something to keep in mind. Take care of your heart. And how do you do that? You engage in physical activity, exercise, walking, having an active lifestyle, and not being sedentary or inactive. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the microbiome disruption. I will mention, again, alcohol, tobacco, and recreational drugs, as well as even pharmaceutical drugs, all are not a cure. I wouldn't even call it a treatment for depression. All of these disrupt your body and overtake your liver in such a terrible way. But because I am not a doctor, I would recommend that you seek a physician if you don't want to be on several different medications, which I usually call a pharmacy. If you don't want to be a pharmacy, taking pills, pharmaceutical pills, one for blood pressure, one for the side effect of that medication, another one for the side effect of the second medication you're on. If you don't want to be that person and you want to seek holistic help, I would recommend first that you seek your physician before you do that. Don't WebMD and take measures into your own hands. If your body has been on a certain medication for years or for an amount of years, don't take measures into your own hands and transition drastically to a holistic measure on your own. This can shock your body and it can be detrimental to your health as well. There has to be an organization, there's a method, there's a way for you to wean off of these years of medication and transition to a holistic healing. There is appropriate ways to do this and inappropriate ways to do this. Inappropriate way would be to take measures into your own hands and drastically change and think that you can automatically switch to a holistic measure for your illnesses. Don't do that. Speak to your doctor, tell them honestly your wishes, do your research on it, and then go talk to a holistic physician first and have them recommend for you or what is best for you to do as far as taking measures into your own hands in a natural medicine realm. Now, the microbiome is a collection of trillions of microorganisms, including bacteria that inhabit and interact inside of the body, with effects ranging from beneficial to pathogenic, meaning disease-causing. Now, the act of engaging in things that are toxic to your body will disrupt your microbiome and will not function properly. The gut microbiota are considered so necessary and so integrated into functioning for your body that some describe this population as an overlooked organ. And I got this information from NCBI, a study done in 2019. Now, the reason why I include this is because if a person with depressive symptoms, if you go into a doctor's office and you share with your physician, any physician, your primary care physician who knows all about Western medicine, diagnosing and giving you a pharmaceutical prescription for your illness, and you tell them about your issues that you're having, your emotions, things that you used to enjoy that you don't enjoy anymore, you're depressed for whatever reason it is, the first thing that they are going to do is send you to a psychiatrist, a therapist, or give you some form of drug for depression, an antidepressant. They are not going to test for your microbiome function. That is probably the last thing on their mind. And the reason why I bring this up is because this is a new way to look at things if you're having or suffering from symptoms of depression. It's a new way to think about your diet and getting healthier. That way your emotional and physical state and mental state can become healthier. Now, when our microbiome is disrupted, we are at high risk for major depressive disorder and chronic disease. The relationship with major depressive disorder and our microbiome is within something that is called the gut-brain axis. Now, the gut-brain axis is a communication system that integrates neural, hormonal, and immunological signaling between the gut and the brain. It's considered a route through which to access the brain. Significant progress has been made over the past decade in recognizing the important ways in which gut microbiota relate to the brain function. This is also coming from the same study on NCBI. In relation to major depressive disorder, associations between the gut microbiome and depression have been identified in studies of inflammatory states and gut barrier health. Now, inflammation is the leading cause, or it is what causes most chronic illnesses. It's because of inflammation inside of you. And this comes from what you ingest, how you take care of your body. Now, if you can see the photo that I have on here, the microbiota gut-brain axis, there's something down here called dysbiosis and eubiosis. Your ultimate goal is that you want to be here, is have a healthy homeostasis within your body, which is to say, have your body in balance. Now, the easiest way that I can explain this is you have your brain, which is your organ for functioning throughout your entire body. Your brain sends neural signals, chemicals to every part of your, or to every organ system inside of your body for it to function properly. The brain takes the nutrients from your body or of what you ingest so that it can function properly. If you are not ingesting a proper diet, if you are engaging in an unhealthy lifestyle, your brain is going to shut down. It's not going to function properly. And that is because your brain isn't going to use the unhealthy nutrients that you're putting into your system to function. Your brain's only going to take the good of what you ingest. So if your brain is not healthy, your mental state isn't going to be healthy and the rest of your body isn't going to be healthy. Or better said, if the mind isn't healthy, the body will not be healthy, and vice versa. If the body is not healthy, the mind is not going to be healthy as well. Now, a cure. It is said that females suffer more from depression, more than males. So it is recommended for females to get checked for hormonal balance and for any vitamin deficiencies. For both male and females, do away with anything that is going to cause potential toxicity inside your body, such as alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and avoid foods that are processed and high in sugar. Cleanse the diet lifestyle by increasing foods that you can eat, such as raw vegetables and fruits. If you're a diabetic, obviously avoid fruits, but I'm sure that there is a substitute for such. And find a method to manage your stress, because stress is something that is said to be considered a killer. If you cannot manage your stress, it will eventually lead to major depressive disorders and your body will eventually start shutting down. Now, this is someone that I have referenced a lot within my studies when I went through an entire mental health period for months. And his name is Dr. Gabor Mate. He is a Jewish Canadian physician. He deals a lot with depression through his own experiences as well. He deals with addicts and he uses a form of compassion to cure his patients. With that being said, he says to be with your pain. If you can read here, it says the repression of emotion, which is a survival strategy, which is what a lot of people do. They repress their emotions and they don't reach out for help because they feel that they need to be the strong ones. You are not weak if you reach out for help. It is actually strong for someone to admit that they need help. It is strength and it takes a lot of courage. And it's considered to be a survival strategy, then becomes a source of physiological illness later on. If you keep repressing emotions deep down inside of you, it will eventually lead to illnesses. And the bottom quote, if it's unclear, says, "We may not be responsible for the world that created our minds, but we can take responsibility for the mind with which we create our world." I don't wish for anyone to live in a dark world where they are constantly being followed by a dark cloud and feeling of falling into an abyss, having no enjoyment. So the number one thing that is recommended for everyone to do is to pray and engage in scripture. One of the things that I've noticed is that rehabilitation homes for addicts, they use a form of spirituality for the addict to lean on something spiritual to look forward to put their faith in. A lot of times people put their faith into something false and they fall back into the same routine of addiction. I would recommend that you seek the one true God, the one who can cure all of your diseases, all of your thoughts, who can cure your body, which is the one true God in heaven, the one true God that it speaks of in the Holy Bible. He is waiting for you to come to him in prayer because he already knows what you need. He's just waiting for you to ask, and it costs no, and there is no price for this. It is a gift. Also, having a clean diet. Exercising. Exercising actually releases endorphins. Endorphins act on the opiate receptors in our brains, the reward system. They reduce pain and boost pleasure, resulting in a feeling of well-being. Also, go into nature with someone, talk to someone, reach out to someone, seek help. There is behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and there is talk therapy. Now, something that is said about a therapist. A good therapist is a good listener. If you don't want to pay money to talk to a therapist, find a friend, a family member, someone who will listen to you. And in another way, if you know someone who is dealing with something, be a good listener, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, anyone. Be the listener that they need, because you will be doing so much well to their health. And it can be a possibility for saving this person from the worst, which is suicide or harming themselves. Other forms of therapy is something called chromotherapy, not chemotherapy, not to get it confused. Chromotherapy is the use of infrared LED light saunas. You can find these at any saunas. If you Google infrared LED light saunas, I'm sure you can find one in your city. It costs no more than maybe $25 for a session of 30 minutes. They should have a chart in the office that tells you the different lights and what they help with. Some lights help with a clear mind, some help with muscle aches, some help with depression, some are emotional boosts. So this is a form of a therapy to feel distressed and to feel a boost of mood, a mood boost. However, it is not recommended to use them if anyone has any heart conditions, high blood pressure, if they're claustrophobic, or if they have syncope, which means fainting episodes. Also, if you're on any kind of medication, if you have implanted medical devices such as a pacemaker or a metal rod due to a broken bone, or if you have a medical condition, whether it's acute or chronic, you should be cautious and obviously seek medical advice before you engage into this type of therapy. This is called chromotherapy. You can also use essential oils. Some allow you to use an essential oil, and if you study up on essential oils, it will tell you which ones are the most soothing and the most calming. Also, St. John's wort. There is a recommendation by a doctor, David Miscala. I hope I am not mispronouncing that. He is the director of the Depression and Clinical Research Program for Massachusetts General Hospital, and he is also professor of psychiatry of Harvard School of Medicine. The recommendation dosing of St. John's wort is 300 to 18 milligrams 2 to 3 times a day, and the most common dose that people use is 900 milligrams a day. Now, NCBI has done a study, and they came to the conclusion that conventional antidepressants, such as reuptake inhibitors of serotonin or epinephrine, or pretty much any kind of antidepressant that is used, also known as drugs, have failed to help at least 40% of depressed patients. Existing treatments for major depressive disorder usually take several weeks or months to achieve the therapeutic effects. So from the point that a patient starts taking this antidepressant drug to the point that it actually starts making a positive effect is called a lag period. Now, this lag period, the patients continue to have depressive symptoms and are at risk for self-harm. Now, this study also concluded that despite of all this negativity due to these antidepressants, there also has been little notable progress in the development of drugs to treat depression over the last few decades. So scientists are seeking new ways and improved therapeutic approaches to deal with depression, and the drive to develop a next generation drug with improved safety profiles. So this is a work that has been intensified throughout time. But what they also have found is that something called traditional Chinese medicine or holistic treatment, natural medicine, is attracting increasing attention as a method for meeting the demands for a higher remission rate, meaning fewer drawbacks and episodes of depression, a faster onset, meaning less of a lag period, and persistent antidepressant action and fewer adverse effects. Holistic measures is said to be one of the oldest medical systems in the world. So the next few capsules that I'm going to mention are a holistic measure to treat your depression symptoms. These were recommended to me by a holistic physician that I have found in Mexico that I personally know, and he uses these on all of his patients that attend his clinic for such reasons and have proven to work. So the one that I have here is Magnolia flower, and all of these are recommended to be taken twice a day by mouth, one in the morning and one in the evening. One is Magnolia flower, and try to find the more natural set or the more natural sold capsules. Also something called CHIRANTHODENDRON flower, or in Spanish, flor de manita, melissa leaves or toronjil, fennel, hinojo, fennel bulb. Actually, I researched up on fennel bulb, and it actually helps with inflammation. And last but not least, if anyone is suffering from suicidal ideation or self-harm or harm to others, please do not hesitate to call the suicide hotline and get help. I have heard some of the most negative comments on social media and also within my work when I used to work physically at an office at a hospital. I have heard the worst things said about people who are depressed and about suicide. One of the worst things that I have heard that really made me sad, and at the moment, in that present moment at the hospital, I decided to pursue a career in mental health, is when someone said, suicide is a selfish act. It is not a selfish act. Suicide should never be the means to end someone's life. It should never happen. It should never happen among children. It should among youth, among anyone. It is very sad. It is very hard. And no one knows what they go through unless they've been through it themselves. Personally, I have never suffered or experienced any type of ideation, but my heart reaches out to those who have. And I'm here to tell you that there is help, there is hope for a cure, there is treatment. Seek the necessary help depending on your symptoms of how severe, how mild they are. And remember that God is here to help you as well. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. And if you know anyone suffering from suicidal ideation or self-harm, please call this hotline and ask. It's a national suicide prevention lifeline. So they speak English and Spanish. There are possibly other languages as well. I would recommend calling the phone number if you know of anyone, or if even yourself are going through some severe issues such as depression. Now, with this being said, I'd like to thank all of you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to listening to me and for engaging in this wonderful and beautiful program brought to you. I want to extend a prayer to all of you. Heavenly Father, thou art in heaven, we come before you giving you thanks for another day of life. Lord, at this moment, I want to pray for all of those who are suffering with depression, for all of those who are repressing their emotions. Please speak to them, speak to their hearts, to their minds, to their families, that there is help, that there is treatment, that there is cure, and that especially, above all, there is you who cures all, you who are the doctor of all doctors, who gives the intelligence to these holistic physicians to bring about natural cures, which are better than just a blanket for the emotions or the problems that have caused others to have these emotions. We know that nobody deserves to be under such a dark cloud and to live in such a dark world. And I know that you want all of us to be saved and all of us to be happy. Please bless them, bless their families, bless every watcher that is watching this program. Please bring blessings to their families, bring them joy, love, bring them happiness, bring them light, and above all, bring them, most of all, salvation and hope in Jesus Christ. I pray that you please bless all of us this day and bless this program, 50 Days with God. This I pray in the precious name of Jesus Christ. And I ask this not through any merit of mine, but in the merits of our Lord and Savior Christ. Amen. Once again, thank you all. May you all be abundantly blessed, and God bless you and your families.
Let us remember the treatments shared today to fight off any infections that may come upon us any of these days.
We hope that you can join us and pray to see you there. Goodbye.